So here it is, our episode 1. We start our podcast, Webelian podcast. We prepared everything by ourselves. Start by setting of the room, the production of what we are doing. There is Anya that is sitting behind the camera right now. We did even this little music at the beginning, this sonor identity. We did it ourselves. That's maybe a good start to talk about music. Is the way we know each other.
Yes.
At the origin.
Yeah.
You are a music composer.
Yes.
Laurent.
Yes.
You are book writers.
I wrote a book. Indeed.
You are a storyteller. You had in your past sport club.
Yes, I had a sport club.
You had a company editing books.
Yeah, publishing house.
Yeah,
in Poland.
You did work in car industry. You did work in space industry. You did work in innovation.
Yes. And now here we are.
Yeah. And I saw in your LinkedIn that I know you. You define yourself as a pluridisciplinary expert or consultant, something like this.
Something like that, yeah. Yes, by drawing my experience from different industries. I try to help clients, non-clients, future clients, our team members to think about problems in different ways, not just focused on what we do today, digital, but there are other aspects to look at. We talked about that in the past. There's change management, there's how we manage people, but there's also different approaches in technology. Then the topic we will talk about today is an important matter.
We're going to talk about sovereignty. But
yes.
Let's talk about the podcast now. Is to try to install basically this podcast is like we want to share. That's the origin. And what you say here is very good. Is more you have angles on the situation, on the process, or whatever problem, or even not a problem, so a process or a topic. Better understanding you get from it, and better you can improve it, making better, simplifying. Most of the time is simplification. Huh?
Absolutely, yeah.
And in what we are doing today in this, so we are like consulting in IT, but we extend it out of IT more in terms of digital transformation and even organizational transformation somehow.
Correct.
Because it touch. I had the chance with Anya to already have this episode 0, so-called, so some kind of interview where I was trying to show the change that is happening in our industry, mainly because AI is coming and going to compete on few segments of what we are doing. So in very short, and we will put the link below, and you can subscribe and follow us at the same time, that we had over specialization of developers in general. So I knew my period of engineer, that is yours, basically our generation. So end of the 90s,
Correct.
Beginning of the 2000s.
Yes.
You were like in industrial IT. I was in so-called web.
Yes.
That was starting and restarting. That we were like doing an engineer end-to-end approach on everything, and this evolved with the complexity in like specialization. So for example, if I talk about web development, it's probably similar in the industrial also. You have specialization in between backend and frontend, specialization then within the backend in different languages, Java platform, Python, Node.js, etc., Scala, whatever. Same about the front end, and even the databases. As an engineer, was also doing back-end, front-end database, and even the design somehow, how you build the forms, etc. We had all this moment, and I think now it will go reverse, that despecializing people, because most of the job is going to be boosted by those AIs.
Mm-hmm.
It's a transition. It's not going to happen in a few months. But in this regard, we're going to, what means despecializing basically is to get pluridisciplinary.
Indeed. Yeah.
Okay. But different layers,
Yes,
different section.
Yep.
But that goes really in this period of time, basically.
Yeah. You have to exit the hyper-specialized area and move up closer to the problem.
Yeah.
And to better understand the problem, you would have to have a pluridisciplinary approach, right?
Yeah.
You need to not only understand the technology, but you need to understand the domain of your client, define the problem domain, etc. So the more you know, will help you to better define and better identify the ways of solving those problems, like you mentioned.
Yeah. And at all the layers.
At all the layers, yeah. Mm-hmm. And on the other way around is that you will have to explain this to an AI who help you come up with a solution. So here as well, you would have to have different approaches.
Still, we will be in charge of defining
absolutely
what,
yeah,
and how.
Exactly.
Basically.
So the human in the loop.
The how is going to be a bit shared, but
yeah.
It's where it is. So in this context, talking about technology sovereignty is the super high layer.
Yes. So you mean at the European level or something like that, or country level? Or?
Country level, yeah, like, government
yes.
level.
Yeah.
So most of the time on the daily, we haven't done thing about it.
Exactly. Yeah.
We see just the result of it,
yes,
and we experience it, but without connecting all the dots.
And we don't challenge it.
And we're going to dig in this topic. Before that, what is your expectation about this podcast?
My expectations? Yeah. My God. I think there are a couple of things we might want to achieve with this. Of course, it's to share what we know, what we have learned over many years of working in different industry, you as well, me as well. That's one thing. So it's definitely the approach of, sharing what you know, which is always very interesting. And then, of course, it's the other way around. Hopefully there's on the other side of the laptop, the phone, listening to us and being inspired about what we say, and maybe guide these people to think differently or to explore other ways of how they do they approach their work, for example. I think, yeah, it's I think could be an inspiration, mostly.
It's in our period of life also.
Yes, the gray hair.
I think that little by little yes. we do less and we're mentoring.
Yeah, but it's also about do less, yes, but it's also about giving back, I think. Yeah. It's absolutely about giving back, taking the time to give back. And we experience it here at Aurélien. We have a number of people who join us after university who have little experience in the world of business and working with clients, and there's nothing, maybe that's a strong word, nothing more inspiring, but it is very inspiring to see how we can guide and help these people, and becoming the future specialists, right, or the future professionals. So, yeah. So, but that doesn't mean that in the future in our podcast we won't have young people, right?
That's exactly where I go. Obviously, it's what we want to do is to structure this podcast, you and me. Yeah. We have the seniority, I would say, to do it, and we have this appetite, basically, to share. What will be the content, basically? We decided to go on that angle to comment, basically, what are the news of the week? What did happen last week? Every 2-3 weeks, we're going to produce an episode. Yeah. So we're going to have a backlog of topic we're discussing. So it's why we're going to talk about sovereignty, because last week with La French Tech Warsaw, that I'm also a board member, we did organize a debate where the technological sovereignty was the main topic. So we're going to reuse basically this preparation, maybe go a bit further or a bit differently because we're in another setting. But globally is going to be this to react, inform about news and what we think about those news. It's not just like in French we say passe plat, is taking one plate from one to the other.
Yeah, we're not going to read the news.
Yeah, we're going to cook a bit.
To cook those, the news.
Try to raise to the attention of people what we are experiencing also. So we are driving Webelian. We are piloting quite a lot of projects for global companies across the globe to share also our experience. So concretely, we can talk about generative AI, how it's built, because we're curious where it's like a new toy that we want to dismantle and understand how it works. But we will share also, okay, but what do you do with it? Where to start? What are the benefits? Where is the first steps? That is going to be helping in the journey to maybe we will seduce new customers, but the main goal is to help to structure this period of time where everything is to be invented with new tools. We don't see probably still all the scope of application. So it's not like, how to install generative AI in my system.
No, it's anything from art to science to technology to business. Everything is impacted, and we actually don't know how those fields will be impacted because this never happened before.
Yeah, exactly. Right? It's like we have a blank page. So,
but like any blank page, it has its risks. And that's also something probably is going to be interesting to talk about. Maybe not today, but definitely.
For sure. And to share our own experience on this, that we are by ourselves also implementing those tools. So let's talk about ChatGPT. Okay, super. We are implementing our Webelian GPT, the same model of a big corporate. You can read in the news, Allianz did release his own GPT for his employees. AXA did the same.
Was it EY, PwC?
All the actors did. Surprisingly pretty fast for this kind of corporate. I have to mention that is surprising. They went super fast.
You would think they would be more risk adverse, right?
I remember this period of time where the cloud was coming. I remember like clear instruction is cloud is forbidden. During years, while you were like on AWS, like shipping your code or spawning VM in a few minutes. You were like blocked in this mindset for good reason. Sovereignty is again one discussion that is relative to that. But here GPT has been like they took 6 months basically to implement it and deploy it. Pretty interesting. So there also we're going to share this journey of why we did implement this Webelian GPT, how we did it. Spoiler: Microsoft Azure OpenAI services. Have a look on it. It's ChatGPT in a sandbox where you can control approximatively your data. Still, the intellectual property contractually is not super clear yet, but for what we are doing, it's pretty okay. We need to be conscious of it. That's all. But we should not retain ourselves. Otherwise, we are going to be too late. And as everything going fast is important. We're going to also to develop on all the area of the company. So concretely, what does it mean for development? Concretely, what does this mean in terms of DevOps and security on the delivery part, on our operation, how we manage our account payable, account receivable, the financials, maybe the accounting, why not? Okay, it's all the area are going to be touched there.
And we tried.
We try and fail and succeed and fail, and sharing the failure by the way will be interesting. We will have some guests also in this podcast, prestigious guests, and
can't wait.
My preferred guests, I think, is in general those silent people that have so much to say and so much to share, basically, but they are doing incredible job in kind of silence behind the scene. So we'll try to bring them under the light, or directly sitting here, or helping us preparing this, because not everyone is comfortable with like having all those slides, camera. It looks cool when you look there, but here is like a lot of things. let's dive in sovereignty.
Sure. Let's do it.
So let's put back the context. Last week, 2 weeks ago exactly, was the 10th anniversary of La French Tech. That is a French governmental program to structure the ecosystem of startup. To make it simple, in tech. So tech is fintech, the green tech, the biotech, medtech, whatever tech. So it's beyond just the softwares.
Okay.
It's, you have tech in like a new batteries, for example. We have
Really?
sodium battery that are released in France thanks to this. You have a brand that I'm passionate about, and as a musician, you know, it is our De Vialet. That is one of this French tech. The
loudspeakers.
The very loud speakers.
The very loud speakers.
But still small.
But small.
Factor. And this year, with a group of really fantastic and quite diverse French or related to France, in Warsaw, here, Poland, we created La French Tech Warsaw. So the goal is to build bridges in between France and Poland, and to address the whole ecosystem that we have in Warsaw. That is a very active city within a very active country in IT and in tech.
Oh yes.
You did participate, for example, as a jury in this mother and child.
I was about to say, but then I was holding back because I thought we might talk about that.
Tell us. This is
the next episode. But in general, it's a very, very nice initiative organized by the Mother and Child Institute. So the Mother and Child Institute is a conglomerate, if you want, of hospitals here in Warsaw and around Warsaw that are specialized in babies and expecting mothers, and infants, to help these people. And one of the departments, and I'm not sure if it's the AI department or the innovation department. I don't remember clearly which one it is, but one of the departments took the initiative last year to launch a program to select startups that could deploy their technology or their products within those hospitals, right? So optimize processes, maybe better manage diseases, maybe allowing patients to go home and to be monitored from home instead of staying at the hospital, which is important, especially when it's about mothers and their young children. So to be surrounded by their family, it's better than to stay at the hospital if it's possible. So this year we are very lucky as Webelian and
for the second year
in a row to participate as a partner with. In this program, and myself, I'm part of the jury to look at those 30 startups, and to help the selection process, so that first or the second week of December we have 1 or 2 winners. Last year we had 2, and this startup will have the opportunity to deploy their product, services, etc., whatever they have. Within those hospitals, and see if it actually does contribute to,
that process finished with a kind of event.
This year, yes.
You remember the date?
I'm not really sure. It's I think the first or second week of December. And what's really nice this year, it's in Warsaw again, but it's in the Polin Museum. So which is a beautiful venue here in Warsaw, and. We will publish the date.
We will put in comment.
I think it's the 7th of December or 9th.
We're going to put that in comment. So let's go back to this La French Tech. So we organized a dinner debate last week.
Both the dinner and the debate were excellent, by the way.
Absolutely, and well organized, brilliantly organized. Meanwhile, worth to mention here, we are like a volunteers.
Yes.
Okay, so we do that on our free time, basically. So when we see the quality of event we have published, not according to me, but according from all the feedback we got as volunteers, it's like we could do a business out of this. And guys, if you look at me, we should think of it. So let's go in this technological sovereignty. So first is we should define what we're talking about here. To jump in, or you want me to?
So if we take how the European Union sees it, they define something. In this topic, what they use as a word is key technologies in the context of sovereignty. So they have defined a list in different industries of technologies that the European Union thinks are key to those industries. And of course, they have not done this alone. They have done with the main actors in those industries. So car industries would be the German, the French car manufacturers. If it's a space industry, it's ESA and all the other suppliers, etc. So they have these joint task force where they identify a long list. And I've recently looked at the space industry. It's more than 200 different items on those lists. Anything from hardware, from antennas to software, to simulate satellites, to control satellites, etc. It's the list is endless, and with that list is that are budgets that are attached to it, so that startups, research institutes, depending on the maturity of the technology that exists in Europe, they would then invest into those key technologies. Right? Okay,
so. And that responded to a threat. Basically.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
So what is the threat exactly?
Well, there are many different threats. Of course, you could say there are very low-hanging fruits, which is employment. Of course, if we do our own stuff, it's better than if we outsource it. There's also anything attached to value creation. But I think what's really matter is accessibility first. So meaning that we do at any point have access to that key technology. Supply chain. I'll give you an example. Only a few months ago, well, probably last year, there was a shortage in microprocessors, right? And that had a very big impact on our car industry. So much so that several car manufacturers had to close production lines because they didn't have access to the chips.
This is why buying a car last year was like a 6 to 8 months
exactly.
waiting.
Yeah. That's one threat when it comes to supply chain.
Post-COVID situation. Probably.
Exactly. Yeah. It was ramping up again.
Because mostly done in Taiwan.
Exactly. And it was about ramping up production lines after COVID. People were not buying cars. So, it had an impact. Another impact, again, on supply chain is how to make sure that the technology you get is safe. And there are some silly examples, like Amazon buying hard disks out of, Taiwan that has Taiwanese chips, that has Taiwanese firmware, that has Taiwanese spyware, right?
With Chinese spyware.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, and so that's the supply chain problem.
Yeah. So you talk about accessibility here, but
exactly.
It can go further about controlling basically the technology.
Yes, that's the innovation part of it, and controlling the technology. And there are, I think, at least two things you can think about controlling. One is in the way we want to go. How do we want to develop a certain technology? So which area do we? I give you an example. It's quantum chips. Are we going to photonics or not? So that's a decision that we could take rather than just take it from somebody else without deciding. And the second part of it is, because if we are the inventor of that technology, we can also suddenly have the control over how we want to use it. Like AI, for example. As we did not invent ChatGPT, well, controlling it's going to be complicated, right? Yeah. Because it's not ours. If we would turn that around and we would use the European sandboxes to develop our own AI, maybe we would have better control over how to regulate this, right? Because now suddenly we are in control. We are steering the car, right? We are not the passenger.
And to go back to accessibility,
supply chain,
a bit versus controlling, is not only linked to innovation, because if you take an example of the pharmaceutical, the paracetamol, for example, we saw during the COVID period that this is a public molecule now, so anyone can build it, but we're not building it in Europe anymore. We will not, because that changed basically thanks to this episode, consequently to this episode. If I remember well, it was produced mainly in India now.
Correct.
Paracetamol. So we're going to we understood that even if it is like a public molecule, probably the business model around this is not interesting anymore. Here we understood that for our sovereignty and capacity, it's better to be able to be in control of the usage, the production, and then the supply chain and the application of it. Okay. So now if we look at, just to zoom more on our industry, let's talk about the cloud, basically, and something that is relative to it, that is the data. So we've been years talking with GDPR from the morning to the evening. Today is AI from morning to the evening,
and then it's AI and GDPR.
let's try to connect all the points without going too deep. But basically, there is some threats from other countries. Okay, even if with friend countries like US, where the Western world together. Nevertheless, the history showed us that sometimes it's not a super fair relationship that we have. So the main event was the WikiLeaks and Edward Snowden. That basically showed us that European data was accessed, thanks to mainly the Patriot Act, that is post 9/11 topic, that the scope of application that at the beginning was really fighting the terrorism did enlarge and practice, and with some limits that we are not sure why some data has been accessed. If some industrial secret has been stolen, if some data has been stolen, that's pretty clear. But the topic is about this. So if I understood well from the Patriot Act application and other frameworks, any company having a mother company that is American
falls under.
Need to comply to it. So it means that the American authorities, governmental, police, FBI, CIA, everything that we see on the TV, basically.
CSI.
The NSA, all of those, they can request to those American company and then their branches.
Of course,
we want to access to the file of Laurent Uhres.
So you're saying that my medical data is stored in Europe on an AWS server.
And the beauty of it, without even requesting
permission,
for the permission, because they have, but they do not request to any European authorities. Okay, here if the police want to do so, you need to have it from the court, basically. You get this. I don't know in English.
This paper.
You have to collaborate and give the data, so they can access basically without asking to our authorities, and without letting us know. Basically. So it could be for a good purpose when we think about fighting the terrorism.
Yes.
Okay, that is the strong one to the financial schemes or whatever. But that has borders that need to be better defined. And we saw with this Snowden case that was probably abused. Okay. So now we have this framework that has been put in place for the third time, basically, but it's recent. It was in July. I don't know if that everyone is conscious of it. Can you explain this?
This US EU privacy shield.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So basically, that bind.
Yeah. So in essence, it says that the privacy shield declares that the regulation in the United States are 100% compatible with GDPR. So we are friends now, which means that under the rules of GDPR, though, the data, for good reasons, right, the data could be transferred to entities in the United States.
Okay.
Yeah. It's always the relevant reasons, right, as GDPR states it.
About the data of the data subject as defined in GDPR.
Yeah.
So the European citizen that is that fall under
me
and me.
You too.
When we are like contracting with a European company, this European company can subcontract to an American company without special consent.
Yes.
Okay, it's the same consent as that you are like delegating the cascading, basically.
So there's a good reason for them to do it.
Yeah. Before we were like obliged to get this consent and put as a content within the agreements. Talking, framing the GDPR. So the interesting thing here is I understood over those last weeks preparing this debate we had. I think Katarzyna Łasiuk de la Mare, so the de la Mare part, that is French, I'm sure to say it well, that is member of the board of iSecure, and she's a specialist in data protection. She's a lawyer, and she really specializes in this area with a deep understanding of the IT in general. She, for example, also like with ISO 27001, so really a field of application that is pretty well established. She explained me what was this Schrem 1, Schrem 2, basically something that I saw several times, and I never realized. It's a guy, in fact. The name of a guy is Max Schrems. And basically, this framework binding European and American frameworks,
data protection frameworks,
the data protection frameworks, it has been broken twice at the European Court.
Yes,
and so is the third text that goes live, and he already announced, and according to Kasia, it looks to be pretty solid. He said, we're going to break it a third time. Let's go, guys. The foundation of my claim is still there, so let's go again. Just a tip for European Commission, if you're me, maybe hire that guy to write the next text. Would be
easier.
Yeah. Now, so we define particularly what are the foundation of the discussion about sovereignty. In terms of supply chain, it can be a bit also tricky. So last week we had also Bertrand Grezes-Besset, that is CIO of Orange Polska, that was a debater. He was commenting about like even to make emerge a model like OpenAI, you need such a computational power that has consequences. Okay, this computational power, what is concretely, is computers, so chips, NVIDIA chips, stacked by thousands, but also the people behind. Okay, we could mention the energy, but the energy is there. We know how to do this, but you need those people and this capacity for a period of time that is not few hours, probably few months. So if I understood, it's like AWS even specialized one region dedicated for OpenAI to make emerge this model. And what he was saying there is like where even that, where you should have asked the American to have a data center or two, or probably the was a solution where to look at our main actors and in Europe, so VHCloud for sure, Scaleway on the other way, but probably VHCloud in terms of capacity. But then you start with low services, so everything that you have to build is you go back to the other problem of the resources. Okay, so probably is beside the fact of building such complexity, there is layers that are under that are participating. So it's kind of supply chain in the IT stack, basically. To talk about the cloud actors, today we see it's like one route of important development that we have upper in the stack now.
Yes.
The main actors are AWS, and AWS, basically. Then you have Microsoft
with AI.
That came in before the AI, thanks to the data.
Absolutely. Power BI, etc.
Their Power BI and SQL Server.
Yes.
They saw little room within the AWS services to say, what you do there, maybe we do a bit better. That's true. Power BI is a great tool. And Microsoft, thanks to this kind of bridge, they develop really fantastic cloud. Our Weberian GPT, we build it with this with Azure, but that technology come from OpenAI. So it's the deal they did. They say, okay, we put $10 billion, if I remember, in OpenAI, but the agreement was to be able to have this exclusivity of their service in their data center, including OpenAI themselves. But we will not find this service in another cloud, basically. Google Cloud Platform, but we feel it's still under in Europe, at least in the need requirements we see within our customers. It's maybe changing here in Warsaw. We know that Google is investing a lot, so we are still active, but we see that is under. How do we bring European champion basically there? So we talked about OVH Cloud, and you know them well.
Yes.
You know the technology well. How we implement this? Where are their argument of the data sovereignty in regard of what we just talked about? It's now a framework with the Americans. Well, is marketing is true?
Clearly. Well, first, I think what we could say is that during the debate, we had the chance to have Robert Paczkiewicz join us from OVH, and he challenged Bertrand on the idea that in Europe we don't have the computing power to train models such as.
Is why I was quoting.
So it was a nice moment. It was a nice moment. So of course we could talk about the stack. We could talk about how sovereign the stack is, but I think there are some at OVH, right? As an example, right? Could we say that OVH is a European a cloud, or is it just a building in Europe using American technology? So that would be the first challenge, you could say.
To detail here to make everyone understand is basically. You build a data center, but inside you build some racks. So until there we were fine.
So the local guy
China,
could make it.
But then we put American computers, American chips,
Chinese chips again,
Intel, Nvidia, few chips from China for sure for the networking or
exactly
what. What else?
VMware.
OS, the VM systems, American. The operating system, American, even if the open source is a topic there. With software.
Yeah, but it's interesting. American. That's interesting. There are two things I would like to say. So first of all, the virtualization software, so specifically VMware, has been certified to be compatible with the European regulations. So if we go into, and you mentioned it before, by the way, if we go into information security management and making sure that, for example, your piece of software complies to whatever needs to happen in Europe, 27001 ISO, VMware has been certified in France specifically for that under a certification which is called, help me out,
SecNum Cloud.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Sécurité numérique du cloud. So we took the first part in French, but we stay with cloud.
Of course.
In Polish, we say nuage.
Nuage. So that okay, we could say that's acceptable. Of course, there's some risk attached to that, but let's say that's acceptable. And then there's the other point you mentioned, and probably that is going to be worthwhile another discussion about open source. The European Union does not like open source in this context. Yes. Yeah, there's a big conflict between proponents of open source and European Union, because they do not like the open part of open source, meaning that there's no control over who does what to open source, meaning it makes it more complicated to certify it.
Okay, yes. In this meaning.
Yes,
okay.
In this meaning. So saying that you have VMware and then you run a variation of Linux on top of that doesn't make you European and doesn't make you compliant. So it's quite complicated. But let's assume that OVH is the response to our need for sovereignty in the cloud. Then there's still the question: how do we make it more used in the industry, in the wider industries, right? So as you said, today it's AWS, some Azure, and then that's that, right? And then the question is: so how do we get technologies or solutions like OVH or others in Europe more visible? I think it's really a question of visibility, right? Because if you talk to the client, the first thing they would say is like, we want AWS.
Yeah.
Right?
And why that?
Yeah. Well, it's like
the level of services, I suppose.
Yeah, I think it's
200 something services.
But absolutely. I think that's absolutely that. It's how good it is compared to maybe others. But I think you mentioned the other European cloud. I forgot the name.
Scaleway.
Yeah. I think they would be a match, at least for some of those services, right? They have quite advanced services as well.
Yeah, I saw that, for example, they are doing the equivalent of Lambdas.
Exactly.
Okay, on their own source.
But I think it's like most industry. If you have an incumbent, you have your main player. They dictate the rules. They make the norms. They make the training programs. So the engineers will take those training programs. So of course, you as a company will take engineers that are certified because, well, you have a certification. You can say, well, I have certified engineers. So
and then we go back to what this example of OpenAI, that is not only the technology, but is also the people that are trained to those technology.
Exactly.
But here we know that Microsoft is very involved in universities and school. So at early stage,
exactly.
But we are in Webelian also having this training and certification program with OVH Cloud.
Yes, and we do see that if you expose people, engineers, to these new technologies or alternatives, they are very interested, actually.
Yeah, there is an appetite to diversify.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Multiple approaches to solve this problem, but I think it really starts to... at the moment you said it's at universities. I think our future engineers need to be exposed to more European technology. There's definitely something.
Preparing the debate last week, we digged in this. Particularly Scaleway. So Scaleway, for French people that are listening to us, maybe it was online.net at that time of the internet, of the MSN and all of this.
Yes.
We had in France 2 actors. OVH.
Yeah.
Means on vous héberge.
That we host you.
We host you.
Yeah.
So the OVH means this in French.
Yeah.
That modernized their image not their image, basically modernized their positioning, basically. So you have those, how we call them, hyperscalers. So those Microsoft, Google, and AWS. They get there soon. Little by little, services are flourishing. So they adapt their strategy to the cloud, so OVH Cloud. But OVH was a strong brand, more linked to the personal computing, I would say, than the professional computing over time, and then became professional extent. And Scaleway was online.net was the two options we had in France, basically.
Okay.
As was to mention, you are from Luxembourg.
Yes.
So you don't know those.
So I don't know this. No, I don't know. No.
And then Scaleway, so they tried to do the full stack with European technologies.
Yes.
You read a bit about this.
I read a bit about that. The idea was to cover exactly what we talked about before. So now that you have the building and the rack, can we do the rest with the European technology? And they tried, but from what I read, I'm not saying it's a failure, but they abandoned the idea. I suppose there are 2 points there. I think it's probably going to be very expensive. If you want to build your own computers based on chips that would be made in Europe, There are a couple of manufacturers in Europe that do chips.
The volumes are not
exactly.
the same,
And then we talked about this engineers, right? So you would need to have engineers that are highly capable to use European alternatives to VMware, alternatives to operating systems like Windows or So and this is not DevOps, right? It's engineers that fundamentally understand how this works and how to change it so that it would work in the context of a data center, which is not the same as installing your laptop with Linux. It's absolutely not the same. So so it was probably very costly to do something like that, which means at the end you're not competitive, right?
Yeah, and this is what we saw. Basically, we mentioned this SecNum cloud.
Yes.
So that norm in France.
Yes.
And we looked at how the French government itself is.
But that's interesting because that connects to what we said at the very beginning. So first of all, again, to repeat, SecNum Cloud is this norm that's actually just ISO 27001 French. And then the other part is that in this norm, and which then also would englobe GDPR, you would not be allowed to transfer data outside of the European Union for any good reasons, right? You should not be able to do that. But going back to what we said before, we talked about the US-EU Privacy Shield, which makes this totally void, this idea of not being able to transfer data outside of the European Union. Well, that becomes a problem, and especially for government cloud strategies. And we read recently that the office of the French Prime Minister published a paper about this
circular,
about their doctrine. They called it the cloud doctrine, and it has a long list of things that the cloud operator of choice should, fulfill. And of course, they then mentioned SecNum Cloud because obviously it's the French pendant of the 27001. But they now had to add the sentence that, and on top of that, the data should not be transferred to a third country, because they had to add this clause because it disappeared from GDPR because of
the framework.
Yes, so they had to add that. But unfortunately, nobody can do that. Nobody can promise that because, well, we're using American technology, Patriot Act, backdoors, data. So now there's a 12-month period in which this additional requirement is put on ice, and every 12 months, the French government will revisit and see if it's possible. If there is a European cloud provider that can ensure this clause that disappeared and had to be added manually again.
I wonder, and there we didn't find any information, what are the actions that are done?
That's a good point. We should follow up.
What is done during those 12 months, basically,
if there's a strategy,
try to dynamize the local actors.
Yes.
Well, when I say local, it's European level.
Exactly.
Probably at France level already. So I know in Germany it's quite very active also on those topics.
Yes.
Would be interesting to
follow up on that.
In this context of the French government topic and those initiatives at local level, basically.
Yes.
There is one that is Gaia X.
Gaia X, yes.
So-called. It looks like more kind of white paper still than really consistent, concrete implementation, but it's quite well advanced.
Yeah, no, I think there are, if you go to the Gaia X website, you will find there are numerous projects now. And those projects, okay, so what's Gaia X? Gaia X is the idea that the technology that we use in Europe, not that we develop, but the one that we use in Europe should be compliant to our values. Right, that's the very generic statement. And then you have the values listed in Gaia X. So we invite people to read it if they're interested. And so here it's interesting to see, okay, so what do we do with that? Well, then we're going to look at different industries and we're going to see how that applies to different industries. or different types of technology. And
so we mean that they looked at automotive,
exactly,
space,
exactly, insurance. Even I saw some, and then if you look at the technology side, well, what about equivalent to ChatGPT? Well, yeah, there is something called what's it called? OpenAIX.
No, GPTX.
Oh, thank you. Yeah,
GPTX.
GPTX. Yeah, which is the initiative to implement a European compatible version of ChatGPT.
Of an Azure OpenAI service.
No, but to be compliant with our values, right? Whatever those values are. But they are in line with all our rules, GDPR, but they are more generic about openness, transparency, be able to transport your data from one service to another, being able to see who has access to your data, all these things that are not so obvious in many different, in your, like ChatGPT, for example. If you have a discussion with ChatGPT, you don't know what happens with that discussion, right?
That's probably one full podcast
exactly.
about who own the IP, for example.
And this is Gaia X, and specifically this initiative is an answer. They try to answer those questions, right? How do we manage that at the European level?
It was very interesting preparing this debate. Is we realize a lot that. And it's basically the wrap-up we want to do now. So there is quite great initiative, in fact, from Europe.
Yes.
Probably there is a lack of explanation.
Yes. Another one was the one that started last year, which is the Spanish initiative in AI, the sandbox, right? Which is not Gaia X.
Let's define what are those sandbox systems, because this is basically what is happening in US and UK also. I saw this AI safety program that it was 2 weeks ago. And it's tomorrow the summit. So can you explain this concept of sandbox? Because at the beginning we were talking about the risk averse.
With strong regulation.
We see here there's a friction in between regulation and innovation. That is basically when
they rhyme, but they're not compatible.
When you're late on the market, you want to defend. So I don't know. You have Tesla in US. They're driving alone those cars, and here we are still obliged to keep our hands. And long story short, because Mercedes was not yet ready, it looks like they are ready and even more advanced. But we kind of block and defend, and that's good that we defend, by the way, to let our industry also compete there and fairly compete.
Correct.
So meanwhile, putting those too much regulation is blocking our capacity of innovating. And the way we take it with the sandbox, if you can explain it, was pretty cool.
So the sandbox is the answer to this regulation kills innovation, in the sense that in the context of the sandbox, the regulation is more flexible. So an example is for the autonomous cars in Europe, there's 1,000 kilometers of highway that's being prepared to allow for
950 kilometers in Germany, or
no, it's the northern of France to Luxembourg to Germany. That's one segment, and the second segment, and again, I didn't look it up again, but I think it's somewhere in Central Europe. I would have to check correctly.
Maybe in Poland.
I think actually yes. I think there's a part in Poland, Czech Republic, going down to Austria, but I'm not 100% sure. But yes, so the idea is to prepare it, and the preparation is, of course, the flexibility on the regulation, which means you are allowed to do things that you are not allowed to do outside of those segments, like moving the hands of the steering wheel, things like that. And of course, also preparing it on a technology side. So 5G will be important, right? To have maybe the way the highway is painted, like the markings, is important. So all this, so that's one example of a sandbox.
And you were talking about this sandbox for AI also?
Exactly. So something similar. We know that the EU is preparing a AI Act to regulate the AIs and the deployments,
the usage of AI.
Yeah, exactly.
So that is ethical.
Exactly.
Etc. Same model of GDPR, basically, with numbers a bit higher. GDPR was 4% or 20 million.
Exactly.
Whatever the minimal is. Here is going to be 5%. We talk about, and maybe the double, 40 million.
So the expectation, I think, it's another year or two before this act is finalized, and I think they had to take a step back when Open AI came out, because the act was almost ready, and they had to, we didn't think about that one. And nevertheless, again, so not to put a brake on innovation, there is something similar than the autonomous car. There is a AI sandbox, in which questions about the usage of AI can be answered. You talked about IP, we talk about ethical behavior of the AIs, things like that. So, and this sandbox today is spearheaded by the Spanish government and some Spanish institutions. So it has been announced last year. There was a very long YouTube conference, more than 2 hours, where they explained the whole roadmap and agenda and the questions they want to answer.
Yeah, we will put that also in comment.
Absolutely.
Because there is an introduction of Thierry Breton.
Yes.
That is the commissioner in English, sorry. That we can say he knows his topic.
Yes.
He was the CEO of Orange, he did Atos, etc. He has very deep understanding of this area, and his introduction is pretty good.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, so, and there are other sandbox out there. There's a fintech sandbox, and there's also a what's it called? A blockchain sandbox. So there are several sandbox, and back to what you said before, is that probably the EU is not very good at marketing its activities, because it's rather interesting.
Yeah, there is always this distance in between, I would say, the institutions and citizen, and of course that Europe is kind of meta institution. So it takes always time basically to get to the citizen. As we are expert of our industry, and we started to dig in something that we were not super interested in, but just heard about. And when we had to dig in it, it's like, that's actually they understand what we are doing. That's pretty cool. And maybe to wrap up this topic here is we talk about La French Tech. Of course, I'm involved in it, so I think it's really one of the most successful programs to stimulate the startups and the innovation. And it's you have the way of addressing this sovereignty problem, let's say. You understand why it's so important and why so much money is involved in this. Because it's our freedom,
absolutely.
At the end of the day. It's the freedom of Europe to be able to decide by ourselves, basically,
where we want to go.
And with who we want to go. That is pretty important those days. We could talk about energy, but let's focus on the technology. Well, I think that concludes our first episode. Was pretty abstract and high level, but it's I think for us important to stimulate the thinking and seeing bigger pictures, and to what you were saying about this multi-angles, pluridisciplinary. We have one discipline that is absolutely impacting everything, is the regulation, the compliance. And we see it more and more and more and more. We can talk about ISO, about all those PCI DSS, GDPR and stuff. It's multiple. And us as practitioners on technology, we have to comply to this. I think the developers, GDPR, the developers are very familiar with it, in web industry at least, because our job is to collect data, basically. Forms, save, submit. So we all add this a bit education of, okay, and now what I do with the data, how I store it, how I should transition it from one point to the other, etc. So that's done for our first episode.
Thank you very much.
next episode will be announced very soon.
Yes.
Again, we're going to stay on the pace of every 2-3 weeks a new episode. We will try to publish it quite fast as it's linked to the news. So news is not a news anymore. After a while.
Yeah.
So thank you, and talk to you very soon.
Thank you very much.